Okay, so hello, welcome back to another Blazor website tutorial. In this video, we're going to be moving on from last video where we create a database. Now we're going to actually be doing CRUD. CRUD is the process of create, read, update, delete. So obviously we want to be able to create a book in our example case. We're going to create a book. We need to be able to read a book, which we actually already have, where you go to /book/id. So you can read the book. So we've already done the R in CRUD. Update, so obviously you want to be able to load up a book you've already made and make changes and then save that back. And then also delete, you want to be able to delete books. So we're going to make the rest of the CRUD here. So obviously, as I said, we've got get, but we need to do the rest of it. That's what we're going to get into today. I hope you enjoy the video. Let's get to it. But of course, first I've got to thank my patrons. A special thanks to Beard or Die, Francisco Diaz, Rek, Yoris Letter, Hades Orko, Art Farrell, and Remy Baldwin. If anyone else is able to help support the channel monetarily, the link to my Patreon is down below. If not, there are also links down below to other social media, such as Twitch, Twitter, and Discord, as well as our website. If you could help us out by following any of those or creating a free account on our website, that'd be greatly appreciated. Now let's get to the video. Okay, so I've just run the app so we can remember where we're up to. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So we have our books table. When we click that, we can actually, it loads the page, and then we get here a list of our books using the database. This is actually loaded from our database. And then if we view, it actually takes us to, if you look at the bottom left here, when I mouse over it, it says /book/1. That's the URL we go to, and then that means it's loading that book from the database, okay? Now, this one I added by hard coding it. I said, when the application starts, add a book called test or the overview, whoop, it works, whatever. But obviously we don't want to do that because we want it to be able, runtime. I want to be able to click, create a book, or, have a button to create a book, a button to delete a book, and so on and so forth, right? We want to be able to do all those things. So let's get ahead and do that. Okay, let's get into it. We need to start writing the logic before we do the UI. So we currently have one function to get all the books, but we need some more specific ones. So we're going to need one to get a certain book, like just one book, right? We only want to load one book. We don't want to load all and then get from that list because that has to load all the books every time. So we want a function that simply gets by ID. So it's a task that returns a book. It's a task book. And then it's get book by ID async. Okay, takes in the ID of the book you're trying to get. Next, we want a function to create. So create book async takes in the book you want to add to the database. We're going to need an update. So update book async takes in the book you're trying to update. Okay. And then also to delete book async takes in the book you're trying to delete. Okay. So these are the functions. We might need more, but as far as I can think right now, that's all we need. We'll obviously come back and make more if we do need to. So the first one, to create a book, well, let's make it asynchronous. Let's actually go and now make all these asynchronous. Okay. To create a book, what do we need to do? Well, we need to add it to the database, and then we need to save our changes. So we'll say _context.books.add. We're going to add the book, okay? We're adding a book to the context. But that doesn't actually save it to our database until we call save changes. So context.savechanges async. We await false. And we need to await this, okay? And that's done. We're simply saying, all right, this book you've passed us, just add it to the database and save. Now, obviously, depending on your application, you might need other things to go on here. You might need to say, well, check something first before you add it to the database, You might need validation, which you actually don't do in here, you do elsewhere, and we'll get into that at some point. Maybe, to make a book, you need to have, I don't know, at least 10 characters in the name, right? The name needs to be at least 10 characters long. Well, you don't do that in here, you check that elsewhere, but it's fine. This is just a very simple logic for creating something. Now, because this is 2 lines, and that means for every service you have to write 2 lines that are identical, you can actually make, we could make a base class with create, add, delete and stuff, create, add, update, delete, whatever. But for now, because we only have one service, and this video is just meant to be pretty quick to show you how to set it all up, we're just going to do it in here in the functions. So for deleting, it's very similar, context.books.remove. We're going to remove the book from the context, and obviously we then have to save changes. So save changes async, configure await false. Okay, get all books async we've already done. That's fine how it is. I'm just going to put that onto a new line. Get book by ID async. We want to return, go to the books context. We want to get the first or default async where x, so x being the book, right? So the first book where the book's ID is equal to the ID coming in, right? That could return null. If we just said first async or first, then if there is nothing with this ID, it'll throw an error. But what you actually want is you just want it to return null. So if we use first or default async, and then what will happen is back in our page, after calling this get book by ID, we'll say, well, if the book's null, then redirect them, or do something else. Tell them there is no book with this ID, whatever you want to do. And then update is very similar to the create and delete. It's just, oh wait, actually go back to the book. You can add async. So we want to await add async, configure await false. Basically anything you can do in this that asynchronously, you should do asynchronously. Async is designed, well, not designed for web, but it's something you're not really used to if you do game development, for example. You don't do stuff asynchronously. There are coroutines, but it's different just because of how frame rate works. And you have frame rate in games, you have frame rate in websites, really. It's not something you think about. So we want to not return, we just want to update. So we say context.books.update book await context.save changes async. Okay. So this is the very simple logic that will be very repetitive. That's why we'll end up moving it into a base class service. But yeah, this is how we do all the different things with books. But now we need to actually use these functions. So one place I thought of really quickly, first we need to go startup actually. I want to add one more thing to the options. We want to say options.use tracking behavior. Use query tracking behavior, none. Okay. What this means is when we load something from the database, so when we get by ID or get all by ID, or well, just get all essentially, when we load them up, we don't want any tracking, because what tracking means is as you're using the model in your page, it's being tracked, and then if you save, it'll get saved to the database. We want to do that manually. We want to be in control of that. It's technically easier not to do tracking, but one, it doesn't work if you use WebAssembly, which some people want to use WebAssembly eventually. So the way this is right now, it's very easy to move over to use WebAssembly, because as soon as you send data over a web connection, over a HTTP request, you've lost tracking anyway. So, most of the case you won't be using tracking. We can, make use of tracking in server side, but it's still, in my opinion, a lot of people's opinion as well, better to not use tracking and just manually add, update, delete yourselves, right? Okay, so set that. Now let's actually go to where we have our current example. So if we go to core web, books, we have our book view component. And in here, we get the book passed in, my bad, so we need to actually go to the website, pages, the book page. So over in the book page, we want to go down to here where we have the logic for getting all the books and then filtering that list. We actually just want to only get one, and so that means the database doesn't have to load us all the books every time. So we just want to say await our new method, book service.getById async, passing in the book ID, which is actually called ID, so we're going to have to change this. We don't have to, but I want to. Book ID, make sure to go back over here, book ID. Okay, make sure that string there matches this int here. So now if we actually ran this, you'd notice that we'd be able to load just like we always did, but it'll technically be faster. Now with a database size of one book, we don't really have to, we won't be able to notice the speed difference, but it'll technically be faster. And especially on a huge database, it definitely will be faster. Okay, now we've made this, we want to be able to create new books and delete old books, right? So on a book, you should be able to press a delete button or whatever. We might also want a different way to view a book and edit a book based on whether it's yours or not. It's completely dependent on your behavior that you want. So I'm sure you guys, if you want different stuff to how I make it, you can go ahead and tweak it yourself, obviously. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me in the comments or in our Discord server. But we're going to go for a very simple one for this video. We're going to have this page just be editable. So we'll have a book ID, so the way it is now for viewing. Then we'll have a /book/edit/ID, and that is where all these are editable, right? So we can edit the name, text, and price. Then we'll also have a we won't have a delete, but on the edit page, we'll have a delete button. Okay, so the edit page will have a delete button. And then finally, update will actually, be on that page, as I said. So we've got, and then we'll need a create page. That's the one I forgot. Sorry, create. We'll have a create page, so create/book, right? Or book/create, doesn't really matter. And then in that page, we will set some stuff up, click create, and then once we've created, we'll be redirected to view it. Okay, that's how we're going to do it. Let's get into it. So we're going to go over to the book view components. We're going to copy paste them in the folder. Okay, let's get rid of the word copy. So this is the book edit component. Okay, and then this is also the book edit component, but the C# file, the Razor C# file. So the book edit component, okay. And then in here, it also needs to load a book. So when we have the page for this, we need to pass in the book that we're editing, but we also need to be able to have the logic to save back to it and all this stuff. So let's get into that now. Let's go over to our imports. We're going to add Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components forms, okay? Because we're going to be using that in all these things. We have loads of forms. It makes sense, okay? And if we go back, we're going to need to make this be called the book edit component. And as I said, yeah, we load a book, but now we're going to want this to be a little bit different. So we're going to have this thing called an edit form, which is essentially a way to validate that our model is correct and how you want it. So the way we're going to do this is, well, if the book's not null, then show the edit form for it. So it's an edit form, okay, like so. And the edit form has a model. So the model is going to be the actual book. So we're going to say book. Okay, we've got a reference to the book. And then we want to say what happens on valid submit. So when they press save or whatever, right? So we're going to say on valid submit, like on valid submit. There we go. We want to say, well, handle valid submit. We'll have to make a function for this, okay? Like so. So we F7 real quick. We'll make a private void, or a private, actually we're gonna have to save, so it'll be a private async task, and this task is gonna be called handle valid submit. Okay, so when we submit that form, this function will get called, and this will handle actually saving the book, meaning we're gonna need the book service, obviously. So public book service, or well, I book service. So we have to add reference to core here. So let's add reference. Okay, I don't think it succeeded in adding the reference, so I'll do that again in a second. Let's try and add again. Eventually it'll work. If it doesn't, oh, there we go, it added it finally. Okay, so we got the book service. When we submit the book, we actually just want to save it to the database. So we're going to say, this is the book edit, right? So we assume it's already made at this point. We're going to say await book service dot update book async, and the book is book in the page. Okay, quite simple. Except book does not exist in the current context because it's capital. My bad. Okay, so we're going to update the book when they submit. Right, so we're going to have to put these inside the edit form now, but it's not that simple. These fields aren't now just magically editable. We actually have to, you know, make a way for them to edit it. So let's make the save button. So all we want is we want a button, or sorry, an input of type button. Okay, and then we set the value to be whatever the button's called. So we'll just say save, right? So we're a button that says save, and then because it's not a button, sorry, it's going to be a submit. So a submit means that it triggers this. So essentially, when you press the save button, we handle valid submit, meaning that we update the book. Okay. So now that we can save, we actually want to add some more stuff to the form. We want to add this thing called the data annotations validator, but it's a self-closing, so it has to be like /close. And we also want to add the validation summary. So this is the automatic stuff that's kind of built in. I mean, it's optional, that's why you can add and remove it. But this isn't obviously something we've written. What it does is it actually displays to the user what they haven't done correctly on their form. So it'll say stuff like, you know, this thing is not enough characters, or this number's too big, or whatever. Now, we don't have any limits right now, so technically we don't need this, but it's always good to have it in because we might want to set limits, and we probably will at some point. Okay, but now that we've done this, we want to essentially have some paragraphs like we do right now. So let's actually, yeah, let's put the header to the title anyway, maybe above the book. Actually, nah, maybe not for the edit form. It makes sense just do it in here. So this book title, we're going to have to do a P, so the paragraph, okay? And in here we'll have a label, and this label is going to say essentially what this field is for. So it's going to say, well, let's put this first, for title, okay? And then inside here is actually what it says, so we'll just say title. Then under it, we're actually going to want to put the input field. So it's an input text we're using, input text, okay? That's also self-closing, so we have to do /close. And then for the input text, we're just going to say, we have to set some things on the input text, right? So just like a normal HTML thing, we can say the ID is, and then we can go for a title. Then we want to bind this, right? We want to bind whatever they type here to a field, sorry, not a field, a property in the model. So I'm going to say at bind value equals, and then what value we're binding it to? Well, we're binding it to book.title. Okay, that's the book's title. And now we're just going to do that for the other ones, right? Because currently, I think, did we say that it was an integer or not for the book? If we go to the book, the price is an integer. Okay, so we're going to say 2 more. Let me just do this. So this second one, it's not title, it's book.overview, I think. Yep, overview. So it's for overview. Okay. And then we want to say overview, right? So the person sees this is the overview. Whatever they type below it is going to be the overview. We've bound it to the book's overview. And then we want to bind to the book's dot price. Okay. So they're putting in an integer. Now there's obviously problems with, well, this binds a string and so on. So, you know, you want to do int.parse, but then what if they don't type in an int? So we actually want to give them an ID, sorry, not an ID, an integer input box. So instead of binding it to an input text, we're going to bind it to an input number, which supports integer, long, float, double, decimal. Because we're using an integer, it knows it's an integer. This is for the price of the book. So price. Okay, use price. Yep. Okay, price. And then that's it for that. Now, we also want a delete button instead. So we're going to say, not instead, sorry, as well as. So it's input of type. It's not submit this time because otherwise it will call the same function as the other one. It's just a button. And then the value can say delete. But we want to also bind on click. So at on click. Okay. At on click equals. We want to bind the on click to delete book. Oh, sorry. Async. Okay. Now, if you look at imports, I have these imports. So if you put stuff in imports, it means they're imported to all the other files. Now, because these are very common things, I've put it in here, right? So we've got web, routing, and forms. If you don't have these, this might not work. The on-click might not light up, or the edit form might not light up. Now, it wants a function called delete book async, so we'll make one. Private async task delete book async. Okay. And technically, this should be async if we're being really fussy. So, well, it shouldn't. It doesn't have to be, but I'm going to stick with, sorry, delete book async, handle word, submit async. Okay. So what we want is, in here for deleting, it's await book service dot delete book async, passing in the book. And then once it's done, we want to say navigation manager, navigation manager dot navigate to, and then we'll just go, when we delete a book, we go to /books. Okay. And then the navigation manager needs to be injected again. So I'm just going to quickly inject the navigation manager. Okay. So this should work. And we can actually test this with the book we already have. So let's give it a go. But of course, we can't actually test it because this is a page for, well, this is a thing for editing, a component for editing. So we have to actually use the page, right? We need to make a page for it, of course. So we currently have the book page, which should, you know, now be renamed the book view page. So, well, we can even just call it the book page, and then we'll make a book edit page. That probably makes more sense. So let's copy, paste. Okay, this is the book edit page, book edit page. We go to the book edit page. We'll make sure to rename it. We want the book service. We don't need the book we do want the navigation manager if the book doesn't exist that they're trying to go to. We want the ID they're trying to go to. I want to change the URL to be /book/edit. Okay. And this is the book edit component we're using in here. Okay. There you go. So over here, it's pretty much the same logic. Just get a book and then set it to the component. The component does the work, right? Now we can actually test it. So let's give it a run. So if we go to books, you'll notice the book, we don't actually know its ID, but I do, it's 1, here it is, okay. So what we want is, we want to go to, instead of book/1, we'll go to book/edit/1. And even though it doesn't look great, because I haven't done any formatting or anything, we've actually got the title, the overview, and the price here, right? I like how it's got a little up and down slider, but obviously this would be an actual price input field. Now the green means it's valid, so this is valid, this is valid. If you've not changed the field, it doesn't need to tell you that, obviously. But yeah, so we've got test, and then let's actually call this the best book, and WooperWorks for updating. Okay, price is now 100. Whoops. Now, as you see here, we've got the validation stuff in, so let's put that back. Save. Now, when we save, nothing really happens, right? But if I go back to books, you notice it's updated. The best book, it's updated. View it, here it is. If we go back to /edit/1, and we press delete, There's no books now. We're back on the books thing. /book/1 is gone forever. Now, obviously, you might end up wanting a thing saying, are you sure you wish to delete the book or whatever? But yeah, we're done. All our books are gone from the database now. So obviously, this is going to lead now on to creating the actual book itself because we're stuck without any books. So let's go make the book create page. Oh, sorry, component first. So we're going to make the book create component. Now, the thing about create and edit is it's very similar, right? Because, well, editing and creating, they're very similar, as I said. It makes sense because you're adding something to the database and you're changing the data, and then updating is just changing the data, from something that's already there. So your forms are going to look very similar. In reality, a create and an edit is just, they're both forms. The thing is, based on, those forms might want to be different. Let's say you're adding a book to the database or you're creating a new book. You don't want to have to write out the entire book before you add it to the database. Maybe you just create by the title and the overview, and then you set everything else later, like, you work on it. So for certain models, it makes sense to have completely different forms, but for like what we're doing right now, they should both be very similar, which, makes us able to do this very quickly just by changing a few things after copy and pasting, but it gives us the ability to change later. So like right now, rather than save, well, first of all, there'll be no delete button. We'll just have a create button, okay? And then when it's created, we will be redirected to either we can go to the edit for the book or just the book in general. I personally think we should go to the edit. So we'll go to book/edit/ and then we want to go to the ID of the book. So we'll just make this $, and then here, book.id, all right? Now, this is actually just where we navigate when we create. So this is in valid submit now. We don't have a delete in the create because that wouldn't make sense. We do need navigation manager. We don't have a parameter book because in the create component, we just want a private one. We're not loading it up from anywhere, right? Okay, so private book is just, equals a new book. It can be read only, so there we go. This component just has a book. So we're going to use this here and here. Okay, F7. If the book is not null, well, technically it will never be null, so we don't have to have that check. But let's just leave it there in case. So the model is the book. We're binding to the book title, overview, and price. Okay, let's create on submit. And yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest. We can now create a book because we fill in the stuff, we press create. We then have to actually create book async, right? Once we've created the book, it gives it an ID, so that's how we can redirect afterwards. That's why we wait for this to happen, and then we go to it, right? So now I won't make the same mistake as last time. I'll copy paste these pages, and we'll make the create pages. So book create page, okay. .razor, don't remove that. Okay. Book create page. Well, for create page, we don't actually need the book service ourselves. We're not loading anything, so we'll get rid of the book service. We don't need to redirect because we're not loading anything, as I said. We don't need any IDs. We actually don't really need anything, to be honest, now that I think about it. For the book create page, at least for now, we're not going to have anything. We'll just leave it as an empty thing. And then back here, it's /book/create, okay? And then here, it's just the book create component, and that takes in nothing as far as I can remember. Yeah, we don't take anything in. We just, we could have just made the code in the page if we're being honest, but maybe we want to do it elsewhere, so it's nice to have a component. Okay, and yeah, I'm happy to do this. So let's just run this and give it a go. Now it'd be nice to have an actual, button to go to the create page, but for now we're just gonna have to do it manually. So book create. Okay, I want to create a new book. My book, the best book, okay, and the price is 25 or something. Create. When I create it, now I'm in the edit page, right? Book edit 2, because it's now book 2. It's here, books 2. It's in the database. So that's it, to be honest, for this video. I could spend a few more minutes, creating the buttons to go to the create page and stuff, but you guys can do that. You can create your own UI for getting around, but we've made all the pages work now. So I've created a book. I can go to it. I can view it. We'll actually probably want an edit button, like view in edit mode if it's yours. So we can easily do that as well. We're not going to do it now because we don't own books, obviously. But if we go to /edit, okay, we can then delete the book, and we're back here with no books, okay? So the whole flow works. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know down below what you want to see. I've already got plans for the next few videos. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.